Hi everyone. Well, this is just an experiment at the moment. I'm going to take you through some of the hands that we have played. Um, I think it's only about half a dozen hands, and really tell you how I think I would have played them. And in some cases, I did play them that way because it features me. So this is all done through the software PokerTracker, where all the hands are recorded. It obviously doesn't record your hand if you folded. And so I've only picked hands where I can actually see to showdown what has actually happened. I've changed all the names to protect the innocent, or in some cases the guilty. And I will always be hero. It's just the way it is, I'm afraid, because it's my software. So I'll always be down in the bottom right hand on the table, and then the other players are called villains. You'll see all the cards at the beginning of the hand that you're able to, and so you'll know who's involved in the hand. Other than that, let's get on with it, and I'll see how I get on. Um, okay, so you can have a quick look around the table and see that we're playing fairly deep. Most people have, well, 1.60 to $2 in front of them. The blinds are 1 cent, 2 cent. So there's between 80 and 100 blinds or so there. I'm sitting on the button. That's a little green disc here. And as you can see, I've got two fours. I should point out that I use this 4-color deck because it makes it easier to see. And the hearts and the spades are the usual color, red and, well, a duller gray. Clubs are in green, and diamonds are in blue. Anyway, so we have 4 players here who have been dealt in, and if I can click through, we can see what happens. So villain 3 just calls. I don't know what villain 3 has. They don't play part of the hand really. Personally, I wouldn't be calling in this sort of position. I'm either raising or folding. But we'll probably come to that as a bit of a theme. Comes round to me as 4s, and here I am going to break my rule, and I'm just going to call. Now, I think there's a good argument here for just raising. I'm probably raising to about 8 cents. So, but the games can be so passive, and when there's no raising like this, a pair of 4s is getting an excellent shot at just limping in here and trying to flop a 4 and making a set. And as we know, sets are very dangerous to play against, as they look so hidden and can often win big pots. Maybe on another day I would have raised this to 8 and try and take it down there and then. Anyway, I limped in, which is very unlike me. And the Jack-9 of diamonds in the small blind raised. So maybe I was right not to raise here. However, Jack-9 of diamonds, is that a good hand to raise in the small blind? I probably wouldn't be doing that. I think I probably would be just calling the 1 cent and hoping to get a good flop. As it is, you really need to be raising a lot more if you want to take this down there and then, because otherwise you're going to be out of position for the rest of the hand. And even if you do make your flush, everyone will know there's a flush there, and when you come out betting, they're probably going to guess that you had it. So you probably won't realize all the value you have in your hand because of position, something we'll probably come on to as we go through these. Anyway, we move on to the big blind, who in my mind has an easy fold with King 7, but they call. Okay, I would fold here because King 7 is one of those hands where you don't really know what you want to get on the flop. If you get a king, are you really happy? It looks like there's going to be quite a few players in this pot, and your 7 kicker is not very good. Anyway, let's see what villain 3 does. They call as well, and that's one of the problems. If you are going to raise from the small blind only 6 cents, most people who have already committed chips are probably just going to call you. And so you're now up against a lot of players, and you don't have the nut flush draw. If a flush does come, you might be up against the ace of diamonds and the nut flush. Coming around to me, I thought I was getting the good odds, 17%. I need slightly better than that to be able to flop a set, but I figure that if I do flop a set, I'm going to make some money because there's so many other players in. I call, and we see a flop. Well, the flop is not a good flop for a pair of fours. So at this stage, I'm just immediately discounting it, taking any further part in this hand. We come to a small blind with Jack 9 here. Having raised pre-flop, you might feel obliged to bet, but with 3 other players, you've got to be thinking somebody else has an ace. And so you are behind, and you're not going to get an ace to fold unless they've got a particularly weak ace and there's a lot of action before it gets round to them. So I would probably check here. Villain 1 bets a fairly sizable chunky bet, 3/4 of a pot, and that I think is probably a mistake. I know they probably feel they want to win it there and then, but the chances of getting 3 other players to fold on a board like Ace Queen Jack, it has almost certainly hit somebody. Villain 2 with a king, I believe, has an easy fold. All they've got is a gut shot draw. They need a 10 for the straight, and having to put another 16 in, to my mind, is foolhardy, to say the least, and they ought to fold. But they call, and Villain 3 calls as well. So, this board has probably hit a lot of people. Certainly hasn't hit me, and I fold. Let's see the turn. Well, the 10 comes. So sometimes you do the wrong thing, like Villain 2, and you get rewarded. And Villain 2 must have felt great at this point because they've made the nuts. There's no better hand out there at the moment than the straight. And this straight is known as Broadway. I don't know why, but it's the top straight you can get. Ace, King, Queen, Jack, 10. Anyway, what does Villain 1 do? Villain 1 now has a straight flush draw, interestingly enough, with the 9, 10, Jack, Queen. And the King or 8 of diamonds will give him a straight flush. That is seductive enough, but with 3 players in here, I'm not sure I would bet, but they bet. And Villain 2 now has a choice to make. They have the nuts, and they should certainly make anyone drawing to the flush pay the maximum price. So if you were to raise the pot here, or make a pot size bet, then you would be looking at pretty much going all in here, and that there's a good argument for doing that. Sometimes you just have to risk everything you have in front of you. And they raise 70. So this is a minimum raise. I don't really think it's enough. I still think whatever happens, Villain 1 is going to call, particularly as they bet out on the turn like this. So maybe there's an argument for trying to not risk too much, but you have to charge him something. I think it's probably more than 70 cents. Villain 3 finally gets out, realizing it's far too hot for him, and the Villain 1 with the Jack 9 of diamonds just calls, and the river comes with a 6. So there he is. He makes his flush. And what should he do now? Having made the flush, there is a good argument for betting out here, although once we said about being out of position like this, Villain 2 ought to realize that the flush, if it's bet by Villain 1, would be a very strong possibility. He may still call. What does Villain 1 do? Sure enough, they bet. Slightly odd bet of 73 cents. Here, you might as well go for the maximum you can get, which is 89 cents. It's always good to pay attention to what your opponent has. So I personally here would bet 89 cents and hope that Villain 2 is going to call me. We think he's almost certainly got the king, but he could, bear in mind, have King of Diamonds here and another diamond in the hand, in which case you are beaten. But I've just realized that the reason why I didn't bet 89 is that he only had 73 cents left in front of him. So this is an argument for always making sure you top up your chips to $2. the maximum you can, and you might just eke out a little bit more. So that's the reason. 73 cents is basically villain 1 going all in, and villain 2 now has a choice. I think when villain 1 makes this bet, he's hoping to obviously get called by a straight. It's hard to see that anything else can really call him. I guess a set of jacks or queens or something like that might call, but that's not likely from the betting, and it's most likely that he's up against a king, or possibly a weaker flush, but it's unlikely given the way villain 2 bet on the turn. So I think it's reasonable to bet with a hope of getting called, and the pot has got so big now that villain 2 feels compelled to call, which is, I think, I'm pretty much sure I would have done the same here. It takes quite a lot of discipline to lay down that straight. After all, that was what he stayed in the hand to get, and sure enough, he got it, but he got outdrawn on the river. And we can see this very large pot goes to villain 1. So lots of aspects there, and rather than sort of summarize everything after each one, I think I'm just going to move on to the next hand.